All right, it's 3 o'clock. We'll call our meeting to order. Today is May 28th. This is our regular scheduled meeting, Hutchinson Utilities Commission. Agenda item number 1 is to declare any conflicts of interest by any of the commissioners today.
None.
Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 2 is to approve the consent agenda, approve the minutes and ratify the payment of bills.
So move.
Motion by Don,
Second.
second by Troy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 2 is approved. Item 3 is to approve the financial statements. Jared.
You'll notice the net income on the electric was way up compared to last year, and there was a couple days in early April where the price of power was really high, so we generated, I think Jeremy will probably talk about that a little more, he knows more about that than I do, but you can tell in the sales for resale column, the market sales this year were 470,000 versus last year it was almost nothing, so. Another thing to point out in the usage, and this will be going forward now for the next year, you'll see the industrial's way down and the large general's way up. We had one customer who's no longer considered industrial, who's a large general. So for the next year on these financials, you'll see higher large general and lower industrial. Other than that, we added a whole lot to the 332,000 to the power cost adjustment, and that's due to generating so much. Gas was pretty much spot on to last year, $589. Nothing to report there. That's all I have.
Yeah, I just kind of touched on the rate stabilization fund because we added such a significant amount here in April. You know, if you look at the balance sheet on the electric side, we're just under 750,000 in that rate stabilization fund now. We probably won't see any power cost adjustments for May and probably June, where we've seen some June ones in the past, but we had a good early April 1st and 2nd. We had our GRE HUC node. The market prices are really high, and part of it was because of the McLeod substation, I think, was down, right? So that raised the market prices in this region here. So then I think we generated almost a full day with all of our units, and so we had 470,000-ish roughly in market sales. So that added to our rate stabilization fund, which we typically don't see this time of year. So the customers might see a little reprieve in June as well when our summer rates go into effect, because we have, we're well above our $400,000 threshold in there, which we're typically not at this time. So that's a good thing, that we have generating units that we can take advantage of that, and that helps out the retail customers. On that, otherwise, I thought things looked pretty good. Again, from a financial standpoint, we're trending well above last year when you take out the reimbursement from Heartland Corn. So we're sitting pretty well. The gas again was up through April, so we've trended higher above that. And as we readjusted the budget down the electric side, so we're trending more in line with what our current usage is. I mentioned that through our budgeting process last year. I pulled down our estimated budget for the year about 4% because we just weren't trending there over the last several years. So that's getting more in line with really what is anticipated. Jared touched on the customer moving between classes. Otherwise, I think everything looked pretty good. We added cash this month to the balance sheet. Didn't have anything else that really stood out other than what was highlighted on the notes. Any questions on any of the financial stuff that you guys saw? No, pretty good. So
I'll make a motion to approve the financial statements.
Motion by Kathy,
I'll second.
second by Tom. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Financial statements are approved. Agenda item number 4, open forum. I don't see any new guests today, so we'll move on to number 5, communication. 5A, city administrator. Matt.
Good afternoon. Not a whole lot. We're in the thick of construction season. Hassan Street, as you will see, is tore up. Actually, you might be doing pavement in the next month. And then Dale Street will start after school's out. And we've had a couple questions we're exploring potentially extend utilities out by 7 and 15. So if you've seen some work getting done out there, that's us just doing some preliminary look and design to extend utilities out there, because there has been some interest for development out in that area. So that's about it. So,
All right, thanks, Matt. Divisions. Yeah.
Greater River Energy has set the details on the open houses for the Wilmer project. June 18th will be in Litchfield at the Opera House, 11 to 1 p.m. and then 4 to 6 p.m. And then the following day, June 19th, here in Hutchinson at the fairgrounds, it'll be at the Century Hall building for this at the same time, 11 to 1 and 4 to 6, for the public to come out and take a look at the project. There won't be any formal presentations, just to come when you can and take a look, ask questions, things like that.
And I think Angie had sent you guys out a location and date, so, you know, I think a few of you responded, but
Is there any more than two?
I have three.
Three? Okay.
are they together on the same?
They are. You guys.
All the
get
same day?
3 of you from 11 to 1, right? So
I can go from
Troy,
4 to 6.
Matt, okay. Well, we would just have to set the meeting and do it more than you guys, so.
Yeah.
Is it 3 or more, right? If
Yeah,
there's
if we have 3
to-
going, we should set a
Correct.
special meeting,
Yeah.
so if there's 3
Yeah.
in
So I guess
here,
it
we're
doesn't
gonna
matter.
form the word.
I can be wherever you need me to be. Tell me what day.
Chat later about it.
We have, yeah, we can, I think I have it down in the new business items to set that, so we can go through each of you guys at that time and set it if we need to.
Right. And if you're not sure, we have some time too. You
Mhm.
just have to be able to set a special meeting 3 days,
Yep.
at least 3 days prior to that. So you got a little bit of time, but if you know you're gonna go, we wanna make
Mhm.
sure that we're staying away from a quorum.
Yep.
Okay.
Like Matt said, construction's kind of full go right now, so we're just starting our projects and finishing up things from last year and starting new things.
Mhm. Mike?
The tuck pointing project started down at plant today. So not much has started yet, they're just kind of getting set up. Next week you'll start seeing more action with that. And then stack testing for the Wardzilla Unit 5 is scheduled for June 12th for that retest, so that unit's been tagged. Until we get a good stack test back, so we can get that sent out to the NPCA. So that's all I have.
Byron, got anything today?
I got nothing to add this month.
All right. Sounds good.
Something new for me.
Human resources, Angie?
Busy working with Byron, and we've been going through some files and getting him on the loop of things, and so busy with that, and then been working on some policies that we'll be reviewing too. So,
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Legal.
Nothing today.
All right. The general manager.
Just working through a couple different things, working through a tolling agreement, looking at some different iterations there to see if there's something that we want to get into. You know, we're having some just general conversations about how many tolling agreements do we get into if we're looking to extend into a capacity agreement on the back end, and do we want to tap that unit with other counterparties that may use it more often than maybe we do it. So, you know, kind of looking at maybe it's a better option to extend the life of that unit as long as we can, since these capacity agreements are more lucrative relative to the tolling agreement. But we're looking at a couple of different iterations to see if we can build in some additional flexibility on that. So we may or may not get into something. There's desire to do that, but we may not decide not to do that in lieu of capacity agreements. So I just want to keep you guys updated on that because we had been working on that. And then working through an energy contract with the prospective customer here. We had sent them back our draft iteration, so we're going to try to get together in the next few days or next week to go through his notes and kind of his responses to some of those articles and some of the energy contract that we're looking for. So hopefully we can iron out those in the next month and bring you guys something forward for consideration on that. Did send off a draft agreement to New Ulm on an updated firm capacity agreement, so I've sent that off to Crystal and New Ulm. So I sent that right before the holidays, so she said they'll take a look at it and then we'll get together and kind of work through some of those details as we kind of move forward and kind of get their feedback on where they would like to see themselves as far as rates and some of those things going on. So I'll keep you guys updated as we work through that piece. And then The last piece is just that capacity contract that's on the agenda. We've been kind of working back and forth through that with one of the wholesale suppliers, so that's going to be in front of you today for consideration. So I've been doing a lot of contract work and a lot of kind of setting in motion some other things. So that's what I got.
All right, thanks, Jeremy. Agenda item 6 is the policies. Looks like there was just a couple to review and a fair more to some changes to. Angie?
Yes. So the majority of the policies, which include vacation, holidays, sick leave, training and education, and small hand tools, all of those are just minor changes, removing the word director from the position, so from the policy, since we no longer have that position here. And then the pregnancy and parenting leave, along with the reasonable accommodations to an employee for health conditions related to pregnancy. Those, I just looked at the League of Minnesota, the statute, just to mirror the changes that came out to those last year to update the policies for this year. So pretty much just stating that now employees, no matter the length of service, is eligible for the pregnancy and parenting leave. And then just tweaking and updating for the accommodations to mirror as well.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you, Angie.
Yep.
Any questions on those approved changes? Be care to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Troy, second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Changes are approved. Agenda item 7 is unfinished business. We have none. On to agenda item number 8. A is to approve the exception agreement between McLeod Co-op and Hutchinson Utilities. Looks like that's you, Dave.
Yeah, so in 2024, late 2024, the school district annexed in the property located just east of the L&P supply out there. That's currently served by McLeod Power today. We've been going back and forth talking with McLeod Power, and it's such a small load out there, and it's quite a distance from where we have power currently. And if you recall back in 2018, we did the same thing with L&P, where we said as the property sits today, they can continue to serve it, but if there's any changes in the property or anything that happens, like if it gets developed more, then we have the right to then go serve it. So we talked with McLeod on this. They've already signed it, and just asking to do the same thing with this property as it sits today.
So just as an example, if the school district built a building out there, then it would be attractive for us to go ahead and...
If anything changes on
Build the
site,
infrastructure.
ownership, anything that would change on site that would, from what it is today, yes, we have the right to go serve it. Correct. Yep.
And I think we've got some alternate agreements on
Yeah.
North and a ton. I think that's good to mention.
Yeah, it's probably good. There's a property on the north side of town where just the opposite thing happened, where McLeod asked us to serve because they had some facilities that were going bad, and for the cost of them to get out there to serve it in our proximity to it, it just made more sense for us to serve it. And that's not annexed in; it's outside of our territory. But we just worked that same agreement in reverse. So we have a couple things like that throughout on the edges of town. So.
Including any
Yeah,
questions?
thank you.
Yeah.
That works pretty well.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the exception agreement between McLeod Co-op Power and Hutch Utilities.
I'll second.
Motion by Don, second by Tom. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 8A is approved. Item 8B is to approve change order number 1 to Border States Electric for the addition of circuit breaker metering CTs. And that is Dan.
Yeah, we ordered these circuit breakers a little over a year ago now, and since then some design changes have happened, and so we need to change the current transformers on 2 of the 69 kV circuit breakers to a higher grade, a metering grade, higher accuracy. And so that's what we're asking for here, is to get those changed before they ship the circuit breakers to us, which will be pretty soon now. So it's just at the tail end of that order. But it's just a change on, because the design has changed over the last year now.
All right, any other further questions on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the change order number 1 to Boulder States Electric for the addition of the circuit breaker metering CTs.
I'll second.
Motion by Kathy, second by Troy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 8B is approved. Item 8C is to approve the capacity confirmation agreement. Jeremy.
Yeah, so what I've kind of put in the packet is we've been working through one of our wholesale suppliers to extend some of our excess capacity into an agreement. So some of you obviously are familiar, and some of the new commissioners. Right now we've got 41 megawatts of excess capacity that we have essentially from our generating units that we have in town that we're selling in with to a couple different wholesale suppliers. One contract is for 20 megawatts, one is for 21 megawatts between two of those. And both of those agreements end in May of 2030. And so what we had generally talked about is, do we wait? Do we not extend those capacity agreements because, hey, we may do something different with our large unit. We may not have it in service. We may do something different with our generation fleet. Well, we've kind of changed that course a little bit with the purchase of the new generating unit, or the leased one that went through this whole process. So obviously, we spent just under $4.3 million for that new unit. It's in good shape. It's running fine. So we've been entertaining different capacity prices to extend out another 5 years. Now, certainly a lot of these wholesale suppliers want to extend them long-term because they've got counterparties or other municipal utilities or other customers that need long-term capacity requirements to fulfill their federal obligations, federal and state obligations in some situations. But we felt this was a good time. The market prices, the auction prices came out not too long ago, and on an annual basis they were around $6.60 kW a month, so they've significantly gone up in zone 1 in our market. So it was a good time. We've been having some different conversations with some of the different ones on general pricing, but I thought this was a good time with the significant price increase on an annual basis because we are short up on the zone 1, and it may be good to see if I could consummate something at least for another 5 years, all past 2030. So I've been working with NextEra to work through that. They're working through a larger package proposal with some of their counterparties, and this capacity agreement would be a portion of their overall package because they supply energy and other types of services to their counterparties. So I originally put out a proposal of $7 based on what the auction prices were. So that proposal was currently in with their counterparties, but they wanted to have a little bit of wiggle room in case they needed to consummate their overall proposal. So they sent back a proposal of not going less than $6.90. If they can get more than that, they'll certainly look to do that because it's a benefit to us and them as well as our relationships. But they wanted to at least get at this point this portion done of the overall package proposal they're proposing to. So I said I'd put it in the board packet today. It's not ideally, I told them what I'd like to do because I want to make sure the firm price is finalized and they've signed off before I bring it forward. But they really asked us to try to at least show something that our board supports getting in this agreement so that they can show that that is a solidified portion of the proposal that's in there as far as our portion of it. So what I have in front of you today is their confirmation agreement that says at a minimum we're going to achieve $6.90 a kW a month. We are looking to only sell 40 megawatts, so we're peeling back the 1 megawatt. There is provisions in there because if we get into this agreement, it doesn't start out until 2030. That if things change from a regulatory standpoint, we're going to work in good faith to try to accommodate how we to go about making sure that we can fulfill the 40 megawatt obligation. And in a lot of situations when I've talked to those guys, they would help us find capacity if we needed to because they can't default on this agreement either because they've got a counterparty. So there's mechanisms to allow us that. That was my biggest concern is if regulatory requirements change within the market or the margins change and we no longer have 40 megawatts to provide you or we don't have additional fleet that can cover that, we just need to work through those things. So we kind of work through some of those different scenarios that could happen. So what's in front of you today is a proposal to lock up another 5-year capacity agreement at the $6.90 that would generate just over $3.3 million in annual sales on the capacity side. If it's a price that comes in higher than $6.90, I would come back to you either with a revised agreement or an addendum to this one that you approve with the final price. That's going to be consummated for you guys to sign and then those guys to sign. I would actually ask them to sign the agreement before they sent it to us, so that we're the final signatures on it. So that's what's in front of you today. If the board feels comfortable moving forward with extending out capacity on our current generating fleet another 5 years, that would basically essentially take up any excess generation capacity that we would have out to 2035.
All right, that sounds good. Jeremy, has anybody got any
Any questions on that?
questions?
Is there a gap? What generates like a rate change? What would cause us to renegotiate that or set a different price?
On our end,
Yeah.
so when I talked to him originally, I wanted $7. That's where I said we're at. So there's a little bit of wiggle room there. We can certainly offer more. It's all going to depend on what the counterparty is willing to pay for capacity. So what they've talked to me about is, 7 didn't seem to be unreasonable to next year. It was the kind of the wholesaler supply, but is there any type of wiggle room where if they say, hey, that portion we're just not willing to pay that for the capacity portion of your proposal? We could certainly try to dictate that. We can always say, hey, we're not interested in 690, and we can wait and try to get something higher. If we wanted to, if we said, hey, if I said the board isn't interested in getting into the agreement, I would need to let them know that, and we could wait a year, 2 years. But the timing for me was right to do that because the market auction prices just came out, so people are looking for those prices. And so a lot of our old stuff was at $3.25. We had some $3.50. The Rice Lake utility we got into, that was at $4.90-ish. That was the amount that we used to build the generators. So this price is double typically what we've seen. So that does significantly increase the capacity sales from about 1.7 million to 3.3. But it's up to you guys. If you say, hey, we'll take our chances and wait a few more years and see if Zone 1 adds more generation relative to load growth, and we think the market prices could go up, we could take that risk too, right? We could say, hey, we can sit on it.
So I'm struggling to see a reason why we wouldn't do this.
Great.
No, I
Good
think
price.
it's.
Yes.
No.
Seems like a no-brainer.
Right.
So,
My only concern is that out, if for some reason that, like you say, regulatory-wise, we can't fulfill it. Because I see the non-delivery clause in payment in there, but is that a different section where it allows us that out? Or in a different piece of the exhibit? Or?
No, so in that piece, it's called a non-performance. If we can't deliver the 40, there's got to be a mechanism to do that. So typically, what we've talked about is either us, it'd probably be us and the wholesaler in conjunction, either going out on the auction to buy the amount that we're short, or working with a counterparty that has excess capacity that we would buy. And the hopes is if let's say we can only now fulfill 35 megawatts. My intention would be the 5 that we're short, we would be able to buy that at cheaper than 690 and still make money on that. And that's their intention as well. So they will help us try to find the most cost-effective option for that. But we always have the auction we can go to every year. And the auction prices now in MISO are seasonal. So there's a summer rate, a spring rate, a fall rate, a December rate. So the timing on that, we'd have to piece that together. I don't anticipate us paying more than $690 if we had to go to the auction, but I don't have I couldn't sit here today and tell you in 5 years from now that it couldn't be higher, depending on if we needed the need. But we've ran into a little bit of that with our current existing, where we couldn't supply them all of the capacity when our generating unit was down. So that had to get covered. They had to find their own capacity for that cost, so we ended up getting short revenue because they had to buy capacity to fulfill that. So we've already been in that situation.
that would probably be the only reason we wouldn't be able to fulfill it if something catastrophic happened to one of the units, or primarily that unit up there.
Of our own generating, correct?
Yes, of our own generation.
Correct.
How far ahead did we sign our last capacity agreements? before
We're
they
doing
took
them on,
effect?
the last 5-year block we did was about 2 years before it started-ish. Do you recall?
Probably, but I can't.
Year or two.
recall.
Not as long, and I know it's not as far as this one is.
This seems like it's a lot farther ahead than I
This
remember.
one is farther ahead, yep.
Do you think we're getting a premium for that? Or is it just,
We're getting we're getting a premium for two reasons. One, the auction prices just settled, because auction prices are high, and two, the long-term outlook is Zone 1's going to be short of new generation going in that surpasses the load growth anticipated. So Zone 1 has been short the last couple of years, not to quite the level of margins that we've seen this year. That's what's elevated the capacity price in this particular zone, not MISO as a whole, but this zone that we're in. So those are the two factors: is load growth, projected load growth in the market, and that's outpacing or the generation being able to get put in this zone because of the queue backlog and other things going on. They have to build out a lot of transmission in this region. They talk about tranche 1 and 2. So there's areas where they want to put in new projects, but they got to wait till transmission gets built up, and that takes a process. So all those timings of less generation, more load growth, less transmission to supply the load to certain load region areas, all those are driving up the costs in this region, as it did in zone. I think Michigan zone a year or two ago, 3, 4, zone 5.
It's maxed out.
That had the same issue that had spiked up because of stuff coming off and not being, new generation not being put in its place, and then load growth. So that timing of that is maximizing the pricing right now. In 5 years now, that could change. I mean, that anytime you're selling stuff out, it could be higher pricing we could get, it could be lower pricing. It's kind of where you feel comfortable at, where you think there's good value in the generation capacity that we have now, and relative to what we currently have in place. This is a premium relative to any of the agreements we have in place significantly. So I thought it was worth bringing forward for you guys for consideration. So
You reviewed it, Mark?
Yes, and Jeremy and I talked about it 3 or 4 times.
No concerns?
Nope, I mean, just the biggest thing that we talked about was this $6.90 price, and we should best approach that, and we just came to the same conclusion that, hey, I mean, if we're able to get the higher price, we'll just bring a new agreement for you to consider.
the other piece that Mark and I did talk about, and Dan, was in this new agreement, there's a 10-day window of non-performance piece that would create a potential timing issue. Where, hey, if you can't fulfill your obligation within 10 days of the auction, you gotta either pay us to go out and get our capacity, or whatever the case may be. So the question on that piece is a 10-day window. That's a new provision that people are putting in these agreements because they need to get the money to make the payments on the capacity or to fulfill that obligation with the counterparty. So the timing on that could potentially be problematic, and I've told those guys our board only meets once a month. We could have a special meeting, but I can't always guarantee that I can get 3 people there in a 3-day window. So we talked about general options. So one option is we could, when 2035 comes around, depending on who's here, we can either decide
Not our problem.
with the current board. I know with the current board, can people get together and they make it work in a reasonable time within 10 days? Or the other option that Mark had brought up was have the board authorize a resolution that allows the GM to make the payment within 10 days if there's a non-performance issue where you just can't supply all the capacity. We don't have to decide that today, but those are the 2 options we have to meet the 10-day time window. I did ask them would they extend it, and they said we'd consider it, but there really is a timing on our end too if you can't fulfill that. So I said I'd bring it up to you guys, and we can handle it both ways. The resolution gives it kind of the back, is kind of a fallback. I mean, I'd try to get the board together, but if it doesn't work, then be given the authorization to allow that non-performance payment to be made. Because it could be it's going to be over $25,000 if there's a non-performance at this price.
Okay.
So,
Good to plan for those things, even though you don't want them to happen.
right. Yeah, our intention is not to, but we've got to be prepared for it. So.
Any follow-up questions by anybody?
Make a motion to approve the capacity confirmation agreement.
Motion by Troy, second by Tom. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? 8C, capacity agreement is approved. Item 8D is to set a joint special meeting for June 4th, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. with the City Council and the EDA at the Hutchinson City Center.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Don, second by Kathy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 8D is approved.
Just one other thing, I think Angie had sent out any topics for that meeting. I think we've only heard from one commissioner.
Well, I've had conversations with most of them, and I was going to stay after.
Okay, so if you have those, because Matt and I are going to try to get together with Miles and craft the general agenda for that meeting, which is coming up next week. So if you haven't responded, you've got some items that you'd like to have talked about, or let us know, and we'll get together and craft something. And the EDA board did set the meeting today as well at the EDA
Council said
meeting.
it last night, so.
And council said last night. Okay.
All right, any other, would you care to motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Troy, second by Don, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Sneak in.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.